The wind howled across the barren landscape of Kepler 442 bits, a harsh reminder of the planet's unforgiving nature. Dr. Elena Rodriguez adjusted her thermal suit, her breath creating small clouds of condensation inside her helmet. The research station behind her stood as a solitary beacon of human perseverance, a tiny bubble of life amid the rocky, rust-colored terrain. Geological surveys had initially marked this planet as a potential haven for human expansion. Rich mineral deposits, a slightly modified atmosphere, and the promise of water beneath its surface had made Kepler 442 bits an attractive frontier for scientific exploration. Elena's team had been here for 18 months, slowly transforming the inhospitable environment into a workable research outpost. As the station's lead xenobiologist, Elena had spent countless hours analyzing soil samples, tracking microscopic changes in the planet's ecosystem, and documenting every minute detail of this alien world. Something about this planet felt different, a subtle complexity that defied their initial scientific predictions. Her communication device crackled to life. "Dr. Rodriguez, we got some unusual readings from the Western Quadrant," called out Dr. Rajesh Mehta, her chief geological analyst. "The ground composition is shifting in ways we can't explain." Elena frowned. They had encountered several geological anomalies during their mission, but something in Rajesh's tone suggested this was different. "I'm on my way," she responded, grabbing her advanced scanning equipment. The terrain between the main research station and the Western Quadrant was treacherous. Jagged rock formations jutted from the ground like broken teeth, and the planet's thin atmosphere made movement challenging. Elena's exosuit compensated for the uneven ground, its adaptive technology ensuring stable movement across the unpredictable landscape. As she approached the coordinates Rajesh had specified, the ground beneath her feet began to vibrate. At first, it was barely perceptible, a subtle tremor that most would have missed. But Elena was no ordinary researcher. Her years of fieldwork had honed her instincts, and something about this vibration felt deliberate. "Rajesh, are you seeing this?" she asked, her hand hovering over her scanning device. Before he could respond, the ground erupted. It wasn't an earthquake. It wasn't a geological event. Something was emerging from beneath the planet's surface, something alive. Massive crystalline structures burst through the rocky terrain, each one pulsing with an internal energy that defied scientific explanation. They moved with a purpose, rising like sentinels from the planet's depths. Each crystal was interconnected, forming a complex network that seemed to breathe and pulse with an intelligence beyond human comprehension. Elena stood frozen, her scientific mind racing to categorize, to understand, to make sense of what she was witnessing. These weren't mere geological formations. They were alive. "Base, do you copy?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "We are not alone." The crystals continued to rise, their surfaces reflecting the dim light of Kepler 442 bits' distant sun. They formed intricate patterns, geometric shapes that suggested a level of organization far more advanced than any known life form. And then they moved. Not randomly, not chaotically, but with a precision that suggested communication, intelligence, purpose. Elena Rodriguez, a scientist who had dedicated her life to understanding the unknown, realized in that moment that everything she thought she knew about life, about evolution, about the universe, was about to change forever. The forgotten frontier was about to reveal its first secret, and humanity was about to be tested in ways it could never have imagined. The United Earth Command Center buzzed with an energy that bordered on controlled panic. Massive holographic displays covered the walls, each screen showing a different angle of the transmission from Kepler 442 bits. Commander Marcus Donovan stood at the center of the room, his weathered hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the crystalline structures that Dr. Elena Rodriguez had captured in her initial recordings. "We've never seen anything like this," Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka, the lead sinological analyst, muttered. His fingers danced across multiple holographic interfaces, analyzing every pixel of the transmission. "These aren't just geological formations. They're responding to something. They're communicating." Donovan knew the stakes. Humanity had spent decades exploring the cosmos, establishing remote research stations, and pushing the boundaries of human exploration. But this was different. This was first contact, or something far more complex. "Dr. Rodriguez is still on site?" Donovan asked, his voice steady despite the tension that filled the room. "Affirmative," responded Lieutenant Maria Gonzalez from the communication station. She's maintaining continuous observation and has established a preliminary containment protocol. But sir, the crystal formations are expanding. They're growing at a rate that defies our current understanding of biological or geological processes. The room fell silent. Every person present understood the implications. If these formations continued to grow, if they proved to be a hostile entity, an entire research team could be wiped out in moments. Donovan made a decision. "Prepare the Horizon Protocol," he commanded. A collective intake of breath swept through the command center. The Horizon Protocol was humanity's last resort defensive strategy, a comprehensive plan developed for scenarios of potential extraterrestrial threat that couldn't be contained or understood through conventional means. "Sir," Dr. Tanaka interjected, "we don't have enough information to justify." "We have a research team of 17 people on that planet." Donovan cut him off. 17 of our best and brightest. If there's even a 0.1% chance these formations pose a threat, we act. The Horizon Protocol wasn't just a military response. It was a multi-layered approach that combined scientific analysis, defensive positioning, and, if necessary, total evacuation and potential neutralization of the threat. Meanwhile, on Kepler 442 bits, Elena Rodriguez was making her own discoveries. The crystal formations had begun to emit a low-frequency resonance that her equipment could barely detect. It wasn't just movement. It wasn't just growth. There was a rhythm to their expansion, a pattern that suggested something far more profound than a simple biological response. "Base, this is Rodriguez," she transmitted, her voice steady despite the extraordinary circumstances. "The formations are creating a network. They're not random. There's an intelligence here that we don't understand." Back on Earth, the first wave of specialized research vessels began preparation for emergency deployment. Quantum-encrypted communication channels were opened, military-grade observation drones were being calibrated, and teams of the world's most brilliant scientists were being assembled. Humanity was preparing for a potential confrontation. But more importantly, they were preparing to understand. Commander Donovan watched the holographic displays, his mind racing through potential scenarios. Humanity had faced challenges before: environmental disasters, global conflicts, technological upheavals. But this was different. This was an unknown that could not be predicted, could not be immediately categorized. "Dr. Tanaka," he asked, "what are the chances these formations are a form of communication?" Tanaka adjusted his glasses, a nervous habit from years of scientific speculation. "Commander, the patterns suggest a complexity that goes beyond our current understanding of communication. It's possible, and I stress, only possible, that we're looking at a form of collective intelligence completely alien to our comprehension." The implications were staggering. If these crystal formations represented a form of intelligence, humanity was on the brink of its most significant discovery. Not just first contact, but a potential reimagining of what intelligence could mean. "Prepare the quantum communication arrays," Donovan ordered. "If they're trying to communicate, we're going to listen." The wheels of human curiosity, resilience, and determination had been set in motion. Whatever waited on Kepler 442 bits, humanity would face it with the same spirit that had driven them to explore the furthest reaches of the known universe, unafraid, unwavering, and infinitely adaptable. The Global Science Consortium's research facility hummed with an intensity that bordered on electric anticipation. Dr. Kira Novak stood before a massive holographic display, her fingers tracing the intricate patterns of the crystal formations from Kepler 442 bits. Surrounding her was a team of the world's most brilliant minds: physicists, xenobiologists, quantum engineers, and communication specialists. "We're dealing with something beyond traditional scientific boundaries," Dr. Novak explained, her voice calm but charged with excitement. "These crystals aren't just a life form. They're a communication network, a living computational system that defies our current understanding of biology and physics." The breakthrough had come unexpectedly. While analyzing the transmissions from Elena Rodriguez's initial observations, the team had discovered something extraordinary. The crystal formations weren't just growing. They were processing information at a quantum level, creating a complex network of communication that seemed to transcend traditional electromagnetic signals. Dr. Marcus Way, a quantum communication specialist, approached the holographic display. "Look here," he said, highlighting a specific section of the crystal's internal structure. These quantum entanglement patterns, they're not random. They're a language. A complex, multidimensional language that operates on principles we've only theorized about. The implications were staggering. If they could crack this code, they wouldn't just be communicating with an alien intelligence. They would be understanding a completely new form of communication, a method of information exchange that went beyond human comprehension. Meanwhile, on Kepler 442 bits, Elena Rodriguez continued her careful observations. The crystal formations had begun to respond to her presence in ways that defied scientific explanation. Subtle changes in their internal structure occurred whenever she approached, almost as if they were acknowledging her. "Base, I'm detecting something unusual," she transmitted. "The crystals seem to be adapting to our presence. It's not just growth, it's responsive adaptation." Back at the research facility, Dr. Novak and her team were preparing their most ambitious project yet, the Quantum Resonance Interface, or QRI. It was a device designed to do the impossible. Establish a communication channel with the crystal formations using principles of quantum mechanics. "We're essentially creating a translation device," Dr. Wei explained to Commander Donovan during a briefing. "But instead of translating language, we're translating fundamental patterns of existence. It's like learning to speak the universe's native language." The device was a marvel of human engineering. Combining advanced quantum computing, neural network algorithms, and insights from multiple scientific disciplines, the QRI was humanity's most sophisticated attempt to bridge an incomprehensible communication gap. Days turned into weeks of preparation. Every calculation was checked and rechecked. Every potential variable was considered. The team knew they had one shot at this, one opportunity to make contact without causing potential harm or triggering a defensive response from the crystal formations. "We're ready for the first transmission," Dr. Novak announced, her hand hovering over the activation sequence. The room fell silent. Commander Donovan watched, his years of military experience telling him that this moment was more crucial than any battle he had ever fought. This wasn't about conflict. This was about understanding. The QRI hummed to life, its quantum processors creating a complex signal that mirrored the intricate patterns of the crystal formations. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the holographic display erupted with a cascade of geometric patterns, colors that seemed to shift and change in ways that defied human perception. It was as if the universe itself was trying to communicate. "My God," Dr. Wei whispered, "we're receiving something." The crystal formations on Kepler 442 bits began to pulse with an intensity that Elena Rodriguez could feel through her protective suit. Something was happening. Something unprecedented. Humanity stood on the brink of its greatest discovery. Not through force, not through conflict, but through pure, unadulterated curiosity and the relentless pursuit of understanding. The quantum gambit had begun. The quantum transmission changed everything. What began as a scientific exploration transformed in an instant. The crystal formations on Kepler 442 bits began to pulse with an energy that sent shockwaves through the research station's sensitive equipment. Elena Rodriguez watched in a mixture of terror and awe as the crystals started to reconfigure themselves, creating massive structures that rose from the planet's surface like living architecture. "Base, we have a situation," she transmitted, her voice steady despite the growing tension. "The crystals are transforming. They're building something." Back on Earth, the Global Defense Council convened an emergency session. Commander Donovan stood before a holographic display showing the rapidly changing landscape of Kepler 442 bits. Dr. Kira Novak's quantum analysis team worked frantically, trying to interpret the massive data stream pouring in from the planet. "It's not an attack," Dr. Novak insisted, her fingers flying across multiple holographic interfaces. "It's a response. The crystals are reacting to our quantum transmission, but not in a way we anticipated." The planetary defense systems began to activate. Orbital platforms powered up, their advanced sensors tracking every microscopic change on the planet's surface. Humanity was preparing for the unknown, balancing between scientific curiosity and potential threat. On Kepler 442 bits, Elena realized something profound was happening. The crystal formations were no longer random. They were constructing something, a massive, intricate structure that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Each crystal moved with purpose, connecting to others in a complex, living network that pulsed with an internal energy. "They're communicating," Elena whispered to herself. But not just communicating, they're building. The research station's defensive systems began to react. Automated protocols kicked in, creating a protective barrier around the human outpost. But Elena knew they were witnessing something far beyond a simple territorial response. Suddenly, the quantum communication device developed by Dr. Wei began to output a series of complex patterns. It wasn't just data, it was something closer to a language, a method of communication that transcended human understanding. Dr. Marcus Wei, monitoring from the research facility on Earth, leaned forward in disbelief. "It's a narrative," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "They're telling us their story." The crystals began to project holographic representations that filled the research station. Images of cosmic migrations, of civilizations that had risen and fallen across unimaginable distances, began to unfold. Elena watched as the history of an entire species played out around her. A story of survival, of adaptation, of a journey that had lasted millions of years. Commander Donovan made a critical decision. "Stand down all defensive protocols," he ordered. "We are not to engage unless directly threatened." It was a moment that would define humanity's approach to the unknown. Not with weapons, but with understanding. The crystal formation continued to grow, now spanning several kilometers across the planet's surface. It was becoming clear that this was no simple alien encounter. This was a meeting of two fundamentally different forms of intelligence. Elena Rodriguez found herself at the center of something unprecedented. The crystals seemed to be reaching out, attempting to bridge a gap between their form of existence and human comprehension. "We're here to understand," she transmitted, her voice calm and clear. "Not to fight." As if in response, the crystal formations began to pulse with a rhythm that seemed almost like communication. Waves of energy rippled across their surface, creating patterns that hinted at something deeper, a form of intelligence that was both alien and strangely familiar. The crucible of survival had begun. Humanity faced its greatest challenge, not a battle to be won, but a communication to be understood. And in that moment, on a distant planet millions of light years from Earth, the first true dialogue between two different forms of intelligence was about to unfold. 36 days after the initial contact, everything changed. The crystal formations on Kepler 442 bits had transformed the planet's landscape into a living, breathing network of intelligence. What began as a mysterious encounter had become something far more profound, a bridge between two fundamentally different forms of existence. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of the research station, surrounded by holographic projections that told a story millions of years in the making. The crystals were not just a life form. They were a collective consciousness, a civilization that had traveled across galaxies, surviving through adaptation and collective intelligence. "They're refugees," Elena transmitted to Earth, her voice filled with a mixture of scientific wonder and deep empathy. "Not invaders, survivors." The quantum communication interface developed by Dr. Marcus Wei had become something more than a translation device. It was a conduit of understanding, allowing glimpses into a form of communication that transcended language, transcended even the concept of individual consciousness. Commander Donovan watched from Earth as the final pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. The crystals had been searching, not for conquest, but for a new home. Kepler 442 bits was more than a planet to them. It was a potential sanctuary. Dr. Kira Novak's team had discovered something extraordinary. The crystal formations were actually a collective intelligence that had survived the destruction of their home system. They were not seeking conflict, but survival. Their entire existence was built around preservation, adaptation, and collective growth. "They've been traveling for millennia," Dr. Novak explained during a global broadcast, "searching for a place to rebuild, to continue their existence. And they chose to reveal themselves to us." The implications were staggering. Humanity was no longer just observing an alien encounter. They were being invited to participate in something unprecedented. A chance to understand a form of intelligence that was both utterly alien and surprisingly familiar. On Kepler 442 bits, Elena experienced moments that defied scientific explanation. The crystal formations began to create intricate pathways around the human research station, not as a threat, but as an invitation. They were sharing their knowledge, their history, their very essence of existence. "We are not alone," Elena whispered, watching as the crystals created holographic representations of their cosmic journey. And we were never meant to be. The Global Science Consortium made a historic decision. Rather than treating the crystal formations as a potential threat, they would approach them as potential partners. Research teams were assembled, communication protocols developed, a framework of mutual understanding began to take shape. Commander Donovan understood the magnitude of the moment. This was more than a scientific discovery. This was a redefinition of humanity's place in the universe. We're going to learn from them, he announced to the world. Not conquer, not defend. Learn. As the days passed, the crystal formations began to integrate with the human research technology. It wasn't an invasion. It was a collaboration. Two different forms of intelligence finding a way to coexist, to understand, to grow together. The final transmission from Elena Rodriguez captured the essence of this extraordinary moment. We came looking for a new world. Instead, we found something far more valuable. A new way of understanding existence itself. Kepler 442 bits became more than a research station. It became a symbol of possibility, a testament to the human capacity for curiosity, empathy, and understanding. The universe had offered humanity a gift, and for once, humanity was wise enough to accept it. As the first joint human crystal research initiatives began, one thing became clear: this was not an ending. This was a beginning. A new chapter in the story of intelligent life had just begun.